Nacho man, yeah. I got to be a Nacho man. Got to be a Nacho man. I got to be a Nacho man.
Welcome, Vault Dwellers. My name is Nacho Bidness, and today we are in the Shelter Claim Center because I just needed a quiet little place to record the intro for this video. My last video on camp budget was an experiment regarding magazine and bobblehead budget and how much they take up of your settlement budget if you want to fill your display cases. So be sure to check that out if you haven't seen it. In the course of doing that experiment, I found a lot of interesting things about what does and does not affect camp budget. So much so that I had to cut a lot of that footage from the previous video, but I thought the interesting information was going to also be helpful to other players, and so I didn't want to just throw that footage away, and yet I also frankly was too lazy to go back and re-record that footage and that audio with an eye towards it being a separate video. So it's going to sound maybe a little strange as far as like referring to the ongoing experiment that was from another video. Nevertheless, found a lot of fun and interesting things. I hope that if you don't make it to the end that you will like this video, and if you didn't like that you'll tell me why in a comment. And if you want to see more 76 content, I have plenty planned and plenty more coming. So be sure to subscribe and ring the bell. Without further ado, let's get into the cut footage. I actually thought of one other thing that I could test while we're at it. Does the equipment that we put on our ally have any impact on camp budget? So I'm going to take these special clothes off of the forager here, and that outfit, by the way, is the Rootin, Tootin Cowboy outfit. Same thing that the guy that sells bullion wears. It was a limited time atomic shop item, and it was an accidental purchase. Certainly the most ridiculous thing that I have ever bought from the atomic shop, and I didn't mean to, but I thought it looked good on a shopkeeper, and this guy kind of looked like a shopkeeper if you dress him up just right. Let's see if I'm able to put a rug down. So we'll go over here to floor decor, and no. So there's result number one that we can say is that our ally equipment does not impact camp budget. Before we go too much farther, there's something else that I thought I would mention that I think most people already instinctively know, but it is that wires also impact your camp budget. I have done nothing but store about 10%, and I have also very carefully gone through and removed every wire in the camp. All my conduits are still up, generators still up, lights, everything. Those are still there, but I've taken all of the wires out. And even though I was at 100% before and not able to build anything more, now that I've removed all the wires, I have some budget available. So let's go ahead and just see how many of these rugs that I can build. I had 82 cloth to begin, and there's 78 now, and we've gone ahead and filled the budget. So even this very small and very simply wired house does take a significant portion of your budget in order to wire it all up. And so I'm going to store these things because I want to make sure that we're being, very fair when it comes to finding out how much budget the magazine racks, bobblehead stand, and all that stuff takes. And you can see that I was using 1% of my camp budget just on wires. I'm actually going to be interested to see how much of the budget was taken up with conduit, because even though I didn't do very much in the way of conduit on this camp, there is some, and conduit does seem to take quite a bit of budget. Back again here in a minute. Sorry folks, I keep finding answers to questions that I didn't even know that I had as I continue with this process. And unfortunately, there's not exactly a way to go back and re-record the intro to this. After all, this camp is slowly coming apart at the seams. But there are a few things that I have discovered along the way that I wanted to share. First, floor patterns or skins and wallpaper do not impact camp budget. I went through and removed all of the wallpapers on all of the walls everywhere in the camp, and removed all of the fancy floor skins and just made them plain concrete. And no impact to camp budget. I was not able to place down any additional items by doing that. Second thing that I have discovered is that locking doors does not appear to have an impact on your camp budget. I went through and locked every door in the camp with the budget already at 100% and no problem. Third thing I discovered is very important. When I took the wallpaper off this particular wall, I also stored the weapon rack that was attached to the wallpaper. And there was a gun that was on that rack. And what I have discovered is that if you store a display item with objects still attached to it, it does not release the camp budget. I am not able to reassign this gun that was previously on this rack. And so that is, I think, an important finding. It means that we have to be very careful when we have these display items in our camp that we don't accidentally store them, because that budget will not be released and we can't get it back. Now hopefully when I go move my camp, that budget will then be released, but that is a question that we're going to answer, I hope, a little bit later in this video. Next thing I wanted to mention here is I wanted to see what impact stash boxes have on the budget. All of these items here are essentially a stash box of some kind or another. So let's store all of these and see where we end up. We're at 37% now. And store, and store, and store, and store. And we're at 38%. And that was 5 or 6 stash boxes. So very little impact that stash boxes have. However, I suspect that there are going to be some of these other items that are much more impactful. I've got all of my vending machines here. Let's see what happens with these. The other thing I want to try here is these each have a different paint color from the Atomic Shop applied. I want to see if they have more or less budget impact than the base vending machines. So we're going to store and store and store and store. Interesting. I expected those to have much more of an impact on our camp budget just because they are big, complex items with a lot of functionality associated with them. But as it is, it was barely 1%. And where the heck are my... Well, they'll be here in stored. So let's go look for the vending machines that are stored. Come on, guys, where you at? All right, we're gonna put these back down as just the regular vending machine with no paint color to them, and see if we can put a rug down. I really hate the menu structure in build mode here. So there we go. Does not appear that these have really much of an impact on your camp budget, and the different colors at least don't cost more budget. Next thing I wanted to do was try the same thing with the crafting stations. Some of these crafting stations I have gotten some skins from Atomic Shop. I want to see if they have an impact on our budget. So I'm going to store that, and these are all just the basic 6 workstations that everyone wants to have in their camp. And so we went from 38 to 41% stored. Interesting. So 3% of your camp budget if you build just the 6 crafting stations with no extras are worth 3% of your budget. Let's see what happens if we put down the standard skin on these. Of course, these are just coming out of my storage rather than building new. And come on, needs support. It's on the ground. And let's pop this one here and here. Now, are we going to be able to put a rug down? I'm expecting no. Indeed, the budget has been exceeded. So it doesn't matter which of the crafting stations you use. They're worth 3% of your budget overall if you just go for the basic 6. And as long as you just use those 3, they're only 3% no matter which iteration you use. Next thing I wanted to do here was, these items are all items that I would consider unnecessary, and yet I'm curious if they have big impacts on our camp. The fusion generator is a big complex object. Same with the decon arch. This adds an NPC to our camp. This is the ammo generator that you can get from, I think, from the Raiders. I can't remember which faction I bought that from, and this adds another NPC to our camp. These last two, the Fermenter and the Brewing Station, I don't see many people with these up in their camps anymore. Ever since they stopped having the alcohol events as part of dailies, these seem kind of superfluous, and I'm curious how much it's been costing me in my camp budget. So let's store that and store that. 1%, not bad, not bad. Gonna go ahead and empty these. just for the sake of being thorough. And let's store that. That was 1% all by itself. And another 1% all by itself. Decon Arch, a big one, 1%. Fusion Generator, no impact. And this guy is going to be a jerk and sit in his chair. He hasn't been sitting in his chair all day, but now he's going to sit in his chair and not let me store the chair. Come on, man. Alright, he's out of his chair. And that was also 1% by itself. So as you can see, there are some items in particular that are worth a lot of budget all by themselves.